attacks on Jewish people, to me, is attacks on everyone. I heard something last night on MSNBC that really shook me up, and I was up a lot of last night. Um, and I heard more than one member of the House of Representatives, uh, Republican and Democrat, uh, talking about the fear now that goes into their decisions. Um, the fear that if they vote a certain way, that they and their family might be at risk. And those are signs from, I haven't studied the Holocaust. I haven't studied World War II as much as, and Nazism as much as you all probably, but I've studied it quite a bit in the last 5 or 6 years. And to me, that sort of, when fear sets in, when people, when they, the decisions they make are based on fear of being hurt. If you're standing next to someone who is being targeted because they're a Jew, if you speak up to defend them, that you may actually get physically hurt. Um, I think we're entering into this phase in our country where fear has become an element. And when fear becomes an element like this, I fear that there are going to be coordinated attacks in this country.
To your point, I think we're seeing increasingly more and more people being targeted online, and being targeted sometimes just for being who they are. And this is particularly a concern amongst young people. And, part of it is just because there's, there isn't a big digital filter. And people are putting a lot of information about themselves and their views out there. And we see this particularly within school groups where people are conversing, could be in a chat room, could be online. And sometimes there are groups that target others, but sometimes it's just kids being themselves. And then, an outsider or sometimes even an insider sort of grabs onto what may have been said or a photograph. And then suddenly anti-Semitism and racism are part of the discussion. And that makes people scared. And it can escalate very, very quickly. And so that's becoming a part of daily life for so many people. And I think that's one of the reasons why our focus really needs to be on middle and high school kids, because we need to make sure that people have a strong moral compass. But it's when when you see something, say something. We need to have, people need to really, I think, have a pretty firm security awareness now in terms of their daily life, both on a personal level, but also when you're out and about.
I want to add in the dimension of the assault on truth and the assault on history, and the fact that to some degree, to be intellectually rigorous requires courage today, at least in certain contexts. Courage of intellectual convictions, I would say critical thinking and analysis. It requires bravery for all sorts of reasons. In some cases, because of policing certain kinds of inquiry and language, and in other cases, honestly, because of an explicit counter narrative that has no regard for actual intellectual honesty. And I just want to add that dimension to this, because I think the intellectual and the moral are so intertwined here when you talk about an effort to kind of deconstruct any kind of social moral fabric. And when we think about our next generation in particular, but also the general public discourse of which we are a part and hopefully that we're helping to shape, this feels also like a really important piece here. And I think it's relevant, by the way, to Holocaust education, because, I mean, what more glaring kind of egregious example of denial of truth and history than Holocaust denial itself. Robert talked earlier about just plain ignorance and the frightening statistics about people who just don't know. That's not even to talk about people who explicitly deny.